I am Stefan, and you're watching Coffee Talk. Today, we have a truly gripping episode that dives deep into the chilling world of true crime. Imagine being a college student, living your life, when suddenly everything changes in an instant. Well, that is exactly what happened to Kathy Kleiner Rubin, a brave survivor of one of the most notorious serial killers in history, Ted Bundy. What would you do if you suddenly found yourself face to face in a similar situation? Today, we're diving into a chilling reality with Kathy, a survivor, a true warrior. You can also get Kathy's book now in paperback, A Light in the Dark, Surviving More Than Ted Bundy. Click in the link in our description or right above your screen on that tab. Grab your coffee and settle in and prepare for a conversation that will leave you both shocked and inspired.
Then he brutally beat three more sleeping co-eds, Karen Chandler and Kathy Kleiner. Cheryl Ann Thomas was severely beaten in her apartment 6 blocks away. The killer came in from the night and then returned to it with an ease that has so far baffled police and left most co-eds here terrified. Howard Winkler was one of the first on the scene.
When he hit the girls, I just don't think they had a chance to fight back.
Captain Burl Peacock of the Criminal Investigation Division says he thinks it will be a very difficult case to solve. What kind of a person do you think is at large?
Well, I'd rather say we've got a very disturbed, sick individual.
Killings have left her with deep-rooted emotional scars, and her feelings are still confused. Even as she wants Theodore Bundy to receive the death penalty, she feels sympathy for the man who some describe as having had little control over what he did.
You know, I'm not scared of him anymore. It's just feeling sorry for him.
Welcome back. Coffee Talk. I'm here with Kathy Kleiner Rubin, and she's here to talk about her book, How She Survived Ted Bundy. First time you were here, the hard copy of A Light in the Dark, Surviving Bundy. But now you're in paperback.
Yes. Very excited. The paperback came out this year in January. And actually, the day it was released was the anniversary of the night of the attack by Ted Bundy when he came to the sorority house. So that was kind of ironic, or maybe they did it on purpose, but it was really weird to me.
That was weird. So that wasn't planned. That the book released with the date. It just fell on the calendar date the same.
Yeah.
Wow. What does that tell you, huh?
It's going to be a good book.
It's going to be a good book. I'm telling you. Let's go back, okay, Kathy? Let's have a conversation, and I'm going to ask you some questions. And it's heavy. To me, it's a heavy experience because, first of all, when you read about Bundy or see all the movies about him, it'll make one really scared. It'll make you double lock your door at night. It'll make you, oh, I can't sleep. Bundy is almost, to me, sleeping at night, it's the same as the movie Psycho. You know, after you see Psycho, you're afraid to take a shower again.
Yes. Yeah.
You know? When you see a movie, oh my God, you being a part of the real life situation where you are sleeping, Bundy's creeping in your room. I got to ask you this question. How did you overcome that part of it all? Like not being in fear or sleeping? And making sure, do you double check your doors? What's it like for you now?
I do. When my son was 2, I got a divorce from my first husband. So it was Mikey and I who lived into my new condo, and he and I would walk around at night and close the windows and lock the doors. And he just knew that someone had come in my home one night and hit me with a stick. But that was enough for him to know that mom has to be careful. I have to protect her. So, but over the years, and even in the beginning, I had a big crowbar under my pillow, and I never really had vivid nightmares. I was not subject to being afraid at night and hearing noises. I was, conscious of noises, but they didn't freak me out or anything because, whatever and whoever it was something at me, I would take care of it. I was going to protect my son and protect myself. So I never had those frightening nightmares.
Can you describe the moments leading up to the attack by Bundy?
The Saturday was the 14th of January. It was a beautiful day in Tallahassee. I had moved into the sorority house at Chi Omega on campus, 1978. It was a great campus, and I was part of Chi O, and it was a great time for me. And I was a sophomore in college. In December, I went shopping for my new room. I was moving into the sorority house, and I went and got all this new stuff and to decorate, and I was excited. January 14th was a Saturday. I went to a friend's wedding and had a small reception, and then went over to some friend's house for dinner. And around 8:30 or 9, I said, I have to go now because I have to study for a calculus test on Monday. And I should at least open the book and see what it might be about. So I went home and went right to my room and studied in bed as well as my roommate did. And around 11:30, we decided to go to sleep. So we turned off the lights and went to sleep. Now, my room on the sorority house was on the second floor, and it faced the back of the area, which was the parking lot. Our curtains were always open because we hung curtain rods, plant rods on the curtains rods. So we always had the curtains open. It was always beautiful and sunlight in there. And the room was a small dorm room, and it had parallel walls. There were our twin beds. And between our twin beds, we had a small foot locker with just a small trunk. That was the size of my room. That's what it looked like. Well, on the second floor of the sorority was also a hall of other sorority sisters, their bedrooms. So it was a pleasant place to be. So around 3:00 in the morning on January 15th, I did not know, but someone had entered the back door of the back of the house. Someone picked up a log from our fireplace wood and entered the back door, which was not working right. And he slipped into the sorority house, and he went up the stairs. And on the top of the landing, he took a right, which was the hallway where my room was. And he turned the lights off on the sconces on the wall. He undid the light bulb, so it became darker in there. And he went to the first room, and it was Margaret Bowman's room. He attacked her with that club, with that piece of fire log, and he killed her. And he put the sheets up next to her neck to look like she was sleeping. He then walked across the hall to Lisa Levy's room. He attacked her. He did terrible things to her, and he bit her. Now, these bite marks actually turned out to be like a fingerprint, and they were used later to convict him. He then turned to my room, and when he opened the door, I heard the carpet and the door swish on the bottom. And it kind of woke me up a little, just that I had heard a noise. And the next thing was this big, loud crunching sound. This person had tripped on that little footlocker between our beds. And now I sat up, my eyes were wide open, and I was looking, and all I could see was the silhouette of someone standing next to me. And I'm squinting, trying to see more. And then I saw him lift his hand up over his head, and he had the same log, the same piece of wood that he killed the other two sorority sisters. And he slammed it down on my face so hard that it broke my jaw. It splintered it in 3 places. It tore my cheek open, so it was wide open. And I about bit my tongue off as far as other lacerations. And I laid there, and I just hurt, and I'm grabbing my cheek and just holding there. And now my roommate had woken, and he heard her start stirring around in her bed. So he went over and attacked her with that log and hit her in the face and broke her jaw and several other wounds. So now I'm back on the other side of the room, and now I'm really, really making noise. But I had made myself into the smallest little ball I could make on my bed because I thought if he couldn't see me, he wouldn't kill me. And as I'm laying there in my little ball, he's standing next to me again. And all of a sudden, a light shone up into our bedroom. It illuminated the whole room. And I could see this was a man standing next to me. And as the light was shining in the room, he became very antsy and skittish and ending up turning around. He ran out our door and ran out of the sorority house. And then the light went dark again and the room was black. And this light was actually someone bringing home a sorority sister from a date at 3:00 in the morning. And because of that, and because our curtains were open, that light shone up into our room. And I know it saved me and it saved my roommate. So that's what happened that night when the night I was attacked.
Story never gets old. It gets scarier. It does. It really gets scarier. You didn't have no time to react, really, to know what's going on.
No,
You didn't
I
even have
just was laying in my bed.
you didn't have an even second to think, who is this guy?
Right.
Your
It was
roommate?
all, I became in defensive mode where I
Yeah.
was just trying to evaporate so that he wouldn't see me. And in my mind, I was doing that to protect myself.
Wow. For the viewers out there, just picture you being in Kathy's shoes out there. Not a moment. It's the most scariest, chilling experience anybody could even think back on. And for you sharing this, I commend you to share your story because it will help other people dealing with stuff like this. Your roommate, she didn't even have a chance to like see any or register in her brain seeing you get attacked.
Right.
And
Right.
wow.
After the attack, she got up and staggered out of the room with her injuries and went into the hallway where a sorority sister found her and walked, since the lights couldn't be turned on in the hallway, she walked her back into our room and turned on the lights. And that's when she saw all the blood on my roommate's face. And she looked over to me and saw where I had been beaten so badly. And I was just in a little ball sitting on my bed. And I didn't know what had happened. And I was hurting so bad. It felt like knives and needles and scissors opening up in my face. It just hurt so bad. But I didn't know what was really happening. And when they saw me, they called 911. And the next thing I remember, there was a police officer standing next to my bed. And he bent down so he could talk to me. And he said, "It's okay, honey. You're okay. I'm here. I won't let anyone come back and hurt you." And I remember those words, and it did give me a sense of safety because I knew the police officer was going to stand there and not let anyone come in front of me again. So that was a peace of mind that made me feel better in this chaos that I was going through. The paramedics came to my room next, and they tended to my wounds, and they put me on a stretcher, and they had to carry me down from the second floor to the first floor, down these beautiful wooden staircase. And they opened the double doors to the sorority and carried me out onto the stairs, onto the sidewalk. And the next thing I know, it's freezing. I had this little blanket around me, this silver blanket, and it was misty and it was cold and it was dark, except all the lights from the police officer were swirling and the fire truck and the ambulance and the walkie-talkies were squawking as they talked to each other. And as I was carried down a little further down from the sidewalk, I turned my head and I thought I was at a carnival. In my mind, I heard everything and I put a face to it. And the people squawking were, "Come on, let's play this game," and all that. I could look down. I saw the Ferris wheel at the very end. And that lasted just a few seconds, but in my mind, it lasted a lot longer. And after that, I was in a better state of mind. I was okay at that point. And then they took me in the ambulance and took me to the hospital.
Horrifying experience. From that moment when Bundy did that attack, he left there.
He left the sorority house and went down a couple blocks to
Okay.
to a duplex. And he broke into one of the side's window over the sink, and he went in and attacked another co-ed. And the neighbors next door heard him and rang their phone because, that was their safety. Anytime someone calls, answer it. And they didn't answer. So then he left. He left her for dead, although she survived. And after he went there, he stole a car and drove down to Lake City, which is kind of in the middle of the state of Florida. That's where he abducted and attacked little Kimberly Leach. She was 12 years old, and she was just at her school. And he abducted her from the school, and he took her out to the woods, and he attacked her and killed her. When he left that, he was going to Pensacola, and he was going to leave the state of Florida. But before he did, a police officer was stopping him on a traffic violation. So he was stopped. The cop came over to his side and said, "Give me identification." And Bundy opened the door and ran. And the police officer didn't know why. He ran after him and cuffed him and said, "What's going on?" And he said, "You have no clue who I am." And they didn't, because he had fake IDs on him. So it took a while for him to be identified. Now, back in 78, the states didn't necessarily communicate with the government, the police officers and the law enforcement in the different states. But he was in Pensacola, and the sheriff, Ken Casares, was in Tallahassee. And he had been in contact with Washington State and some of the other places out west and he thought this could have been him because it was the same MO. He went into someone's room at night and attacked them. And Bundy was never someone to confront a victim. He always came up from behind and hit him, whether he was out in the city or in the night, or else he went into their rooms and attacked everyone in their beds. He was not something that wanted to confront people. And that was the way he did his killing. So the MO seemed correct for the Ken Casares to look at. And that's when they transferred him to Tallahassee. And he was arrested and booked by Ken Casares into the jail.
Pensacola authorities are still assessing the impact of having caught one of the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives. The identification of the mystery man as Theodore Robert Bundy hit law officials like a bombshell.
In which I have a video right here. I was going to show everybody when they start giving his, basically reading him his rights, or whatever you want to call it, the right words. And Bundy is so cocky in the video and claiming he's innocent.
Be informed and understand that Theodore Robert Bundy, on the 15th day of January, in Leon County, Florida, did then and there unlawfully attempt to kill a human being, to-wit Kathy Kleiner, by beating her about the head and knowingly or intentionally caused great bodily harm, and said attempt was perpetrated by said Theodore Robert Bundy from or with a premeditated design or intent to effect the death of said Kathy Kleiner, contrary to section 77704, 78204 Florida statute. 78204 Florida statute.
I'll plead not guilty right now.
And your grand jurors being present.
Look, and they mention your name in the clip, and he's just has a poker face on, like he is innocent, and he's almost mocking everybody in the video.
He was like that through the trial, the deposition, the grand jury. He was always that cocky, yucky look. He just knew that, this is going to go over. They're not going to convict me. They don't have enough evidence. And he was wrong, because he was convicted.
No remorse, never once, no remorse about anything. Now, hearing when they caught him, what was the status of your condition at the time they caught Bundy?
After I was attacked in Tallahassee, I was flown home to Miami, where my family was. And I went back and lived with my mama and in her house. And my dad was there. My sister flew in, and she lived there with us. And I was in a horrible state. My jaw was broken and wired shut, and my chin was just shattered. So they had to put a rod in my chin. And all I could do to get nourishment was to drink liquid from a straw. And I have to admit, my sister was very creative in what food she was giving me. She'd give me cream of wheat with cheese in it, all blurred up in a blender. And, I'd suck it through a straw. I was like, oh, that tastes better than, just a munchie. So, and then remember one time she tried doing baked beans and barbecue sauce. And I said, don't ever make that again. That was horrible. but my family were next to me and trying to help me. And I was going through this horrible pain, and I'd have spasms because my jaw was trying to open and it was wired shut. And there were these terrible spasms that I was living through. And I didn't know what happened. I was trying to piece together what happened and to try to figure it out. But it took me a long time to get to that point where I knew that I had been attacked. And at that time, I didn't know who Ted Bundy was. I was a sophomore in college. I was in the sorority house. I was doing, everything but listening to the national news. I was going to frat parties and, singing sorority songs and doing public service. So I didn't know at that point who Bundy was. I was returning home to Miami to my parents' house, and there was 2 police officers. One was across the street, and we lived on a corner lot, and one was around the corner. And they were there 24/7 until Bundy was located and arrested. And then they didn't have the need to be there because they had their prime suspect. But living in Miami, the Miami Centennial actually gave my name and address out as a victim. And it was kind of made us all uneven. And that's when, of course, the police officers were there. But how could they do that to a victim who has, been so brutally attacked, and then say, oh, here she is, here's her name, that's where her address is. So that was a bit uncoming.
Well, how old were you again?
I was 20.
You were 20 years old.
Yeah.
A baby.
Yeah.
Baby. So here you are, when you heard the news that they caught the suspect, aka Bundy, which you didn't know was this infamous, the legend of this crazy person.
Right.
Who broke the news to you that we think we caught the guy who did the attacks? And
actually, I heard it on the news. It was 24/7 in Miami.
Authorities from Washington, Colorado, and Utah reportedly will be arriving this weekend to question him about at least 20 other murders. Meanwhile, Tallahassee detectives are still in town quizzing him about the 2 FSU slayings. This is Brad Davis, News Center 5 in Pensacola.
There was always the news channels on, and Mom kept me from hearing the news and cut out the newspaper with all the articles on Bundy or anything she could find. I'd open the paper and saw these squares cut out because she didn't want me to know about it. She thought if I didn't know about it, I could recover easily or easier than thinking about what did happen to the sorority sisters. So I found out on the news by listening to it and putting things together.
Wow. Well, looking back at now, are there any warning signs or situations that you think others should be aware of when it comes to personal safety?
One of my big things that I've noticed, and I was guilty of it as well, is people walking on the sidewalk in a city, and they're doing this. All they do is watch their phones, and then not looking around and being observant of who's around him or behind you. And, everyone tends to do this, and that's dangerous. That's dangerous. When I lived in the city and I left my work and to go home, I had to walk through the downtown area. And I try not to be on my phone, but if I heard someone behind me and I turned around to look, I wasn't comfortable, I just stopped and put my back against the wall and let them pass. And I never had a feeling that someone was going to attack me that way because I was obviously aware of where I was and what I was doing. So, and the other main thing is lock the doors, lock your car, lock the doors. You never know when something or someone's going to come out, and they do it by scaring you. And when you're scared, you don't react appropriately. It's easy just to, scream, and do scream. Do whatever it takes, fight, scream, just yell fire. Because a lot of times you yell help me and people don't want to respond and get involved in a help me. So yell fire and you'll get more people's attention that way.
Now, how did the campus and the community respond to the tragedy? Were there any changes to enhance student safety around that time?
I was flown back, like I said, a week after the attack. And I don't know what was going on in Tallahassee. None of the sorority sisters really contacted me. I would call and say, with my teeth shut, "Hi, this is Kathy Kleiner." And I would ask to speak with a sorority sister, and they weren't there. So I'd leave a message. And Mom and I would go a couple days later in the kitchen, and I would pick up the phone and try calling again. No one answered. Return my call. Mom's like, "Enough of this. You're not doing this anymore. They'll call when they're ready," because I would cry afterwards. And no one really contacted me. And to be fair, they were all trying to live through this themselves, and they were moving on, and they were trying to structure their life in this new setting now. And I was home alone by myself trying to do the same thing. So I never got the input of exactly what was going on campus, other than I know that they were, people never walked alone. They always walked in groups from the library, and all the frat guys were just everywhere, to walk with the women. And it was a safer place, but I felt safe on campus anyway. In the beginning, it was just nothing to walk to and from the library, or, go to a coffee shop, meet people, then go home. So, I was like a new freshman in college, and everything was wonderful. And I was away from my parents, and I was joining a sorority, but you have to be aware.
And I think it still is something that women on campus think about a lot, I'd say.
Sorority sisters at Chi Omega think about it, but they are not allowed to talk about it.
Well, I'm not really supposed to talk about it.
You're not supposed to talk about it?
Yeah.
Because you're a sister of Chi Omega?
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of a rule for Chi Omega? Don't talk about it?
Yeah, we just say no comment.
Okay.
Yeah, you're in your safety zone right there.
Yeah.
And that's why Bundy picked that area. He knew people like you felt safe. You were open. You were not guarded.
Yeah.
You weren't eyes behind the head. And he knew he was just on a mission, a rampage mission. It's almost like he wanted to get caught too, the way he was.
He had been a couple of weeks after he left Utah and went and entered Tallahassee, and he lived in a boarding room on campus at FSU. And it had been a couple of weeks, and he was antsy, and he needed to have his killing done, and he wanted to possess the female body. He did this not as a sexual thing, but for possession. And he wanted to, he needed that fix. So he was out walking around, looking at sororities, looking at anywhere he could find someone to be a target. And when he came around the sorority houses, he looked around to see their access and everything. And this Chi Omega sorority house was right next to a campus bar where everyone went. It was pretty big and pretty hectic there. And sorority sisters that were at that bar that night, left there and went walking in the back of the yard of the sorority, and opened the door and went in. And the door didn't lock correctly. It kind of just slammed, but it didn't lock. And he saw this. He was hiding in the bushes. And that's when he picked up that oak clog and walked in that back door and into the sorority.
Chilling. Kathy, seeing him face to face in court for the first time, what was that experience like for you?
Would you state your name for us, please?
Kathy Kleiner Rubin.
And
the first time I actually saw him was at the deposition. I was flown back up to Tallahassee, and I was subpoenaed, so I had to go. But I really didn't understand what a deposition is. And I walked in, and there was a long conference table, and there were lawyers for the defense on one side and lawyers for the prosecution on the other. I sat down at the head of the table, and I looked up, and at the other end was Ted Bundy. And I stared at him, and I wasn't afraid. I didn't look like, oh my God, he's going to hurt. I just stared at him, and I felt power. I was scared, but not like he was going to attack me or anything, because I had enough people around me. And my mom and dad were outside the door, and there were police officers. So, but he looked so smug and so like, I shouldn't be here. You're just wasting my time, as he did on most occasions that we're on. So I did the deposition. I don't remember the questions. And then it was time to leave. And I was flown back to Miami. And after that, I was subpoenaed again to the grand jury. And that is when the jury is deciding if there should be enough trial evidence to go to trial. And they did decide that. And again, Bundy was in that room with me. Now it's time for the court case. In 1979, the trial was beginning, and the trial was in Miami. It was really, really well televised. And there was a lot going on. And I lived in Miami, and I had to go to the courthouse to testify. And it was just a madhouse. And we ended up getting someone to drive us because there was just so much going on. So it was my turn to testify, and I went into the courtroom. And I wore a bright red dress with white sandals. And I was so proud of myself, and I was so strong, and I wanted to portray that to people that could see me. And I went and I testified. As I sat down, though, at the defense table was Ted Bundy. Again, he was smug. He had his elbow on the table and his chin in his hands, like, oh my God, let's just get over this. And I stared him down. And now I felt better. I knew that this was coming to an end. And I knew in my heart that he was going to be convicted. And one question I was asked that I remember was the defense asking me, is this the man you allegedly, you said, attacked you in the sorority house that night? And I had to take a deep breath and said, I don't know.
Kathy, do you know who did this to you?
No, sir.
Nothing further.
My question. May this young lady be excused? I think you're free to go, young lady.
Because I never saw his face. And it has been hurtful all these years that I didn't help convict him, that I didn't help say, yes, that's him. And I know by my testimony, it helped to put the whole thing together, and that he was convicted on that point.
God bless you. You know, at least you're here and you survived. Unfortunately, you lost friends and all the victims. My thoughts and prayers for what their families went through and what these poor girls went through the last moments of their lives, the terror, the horror. I mean, how many girls total around?
We know of 32, and I name each one in my book.
You name,
and
yeah.
I give them a little thing about them, a little paragraph, because they all had hopes and dreams and goals and lives to live. And I didn't want to be a name with a comma between our names in some book that listed us. It was important to me to do that. So we researched each of his victims and told a little bit about them. And to me, that's one of the most important parts of writing the book, was to acknowledge them. I have my story, what I've been through, and I wanted to tell my story. And it was important as much to talk about them.
I can't believe it. First of all, it happened to you. You know, it's just insane that you know somebody, me and you, and I'm talking to you.
Yes.
And to experience the most scariest monster in the world. You know, when you're a kid, you think monsters, Dracula, the Wolfman. But then this is the real McCoy right here, this crazy individual.
You know, when you're a child and you think of monsters, you think of them as in your room and under your bed or in your closet. And he actually came into those rooms. So he was that monster at night coming into the rooms that windows and doors must be locked.
Margaret and Lisa, what were they like?
They were great. Both of them were older than I. And Margaret was a beautiful, outspoken girl and beautiful, she was sophisticated. That's what I'd call her. But she was so sweet because I, as a freshman, was a pledge to the sorority. And we needed to learn things, and I wouldn't bother one sorority sister a lot. So I would go to the different sisters to learn them, to know, who they were. And Margaret was someone I could go to easily. And she would help me learn a song or tell me about an event that I needed to remember about the sorority when it was testing to become a sister. She was very easy and very beautiful to talk with. Lisa was more of athletic type. She loves sports. She was always, doing volleyball and everything. And she was fun. And I remember many times sitting in her room with a bunch of other sisters doing our nails and just talking girl talk. So Lisa was a very happy, outgoing soul, and she and I connected right away. But both of them were wonderful sisters and beautiful people.
Kathy, your story, Kathy Kleiner Rubin. I mean, links will be right above here. Make sure you click there. We could order Kathy's book, A Light in the Dark, Surviving More Than Ted Bundy. Get to know Kathy. And I appreciate you being here, Kathy. I'll put links in the description down below, everybody. Make sure you order the book. Check it out. I am Stefan. You are beautiful. Make sure you post, comment. This is Coffee Talk. And Kathy, you are beautiful, a true warrior. Thanks for watching, everybody.